In this podcast, I want to talk to you about an important topic that has gained a lot of traction, at least out here in the Silicon Valley, which is the cloud. So, I've framed the conversation in terms of some of the most commonly asked questions whenever the topic of cloud comes up, wherein people have their own definition of what the cloud is. So obviously my first question is, what is the cloud? For me, I imagine, and in my experience, the reality of the cloud is just that it's a barn-like, very secure building which houses a boatload of computers and has a boatload of storage capacity. And if someone were to ask me what's a cloud computer, I'd just point to any of the data centers that potentially Google runs or Apple runs, or any big vendor out there, Amazon. So it would end up looking very much like a big, secure, bunker-like building, bomb-proof, pretty much any natural disaster-proof, natural, man-made or artificial disaster-proof building, housing a big set of servers and a boatload of storage capacity, be it disk-based storage or in the future in memory as the price of flash comes down, or it could be a hybrid where certain applications lend themselves to a disk-based storage much better than a flash-based storage. And obviously if the cost becomes equivalent, then you become agnostic about what kind of storage is provided by the vendor. So those are some of the things that you need to consider whenever you hear the term cloud or cloud computing. The next question that comes up in discussions is, so what do I hear about this private cloud versus public cloud versus my company has its own set of infrastructure deployed for our applications in-house. So what's the difference between all of these? So I say all of these are a variant of cloud computing. Now the internet, you could argue, runs on the public cloud, as in there's a bunch of computers which powers the internet, including your own desktop or laptop, which is connected to the internet, and the way you interact with it depends on whether it's serving content onto the internet or you're just consuming content from the internet. So it is part of the public cloud which makes up the internet. So that in essence is public cloud, and then you have players like Google, Facebook, etc. who've deployed a bunch of computing capacity onto the cloud, onto this public cloud, serving a particular need. Some of it monetized, a lot of it free. So that's essentially what you see as a manifestation of the cloud for your use, essentially free, and it would be in the public cloud domain. Now what does it mean when somebody says a private cloud? Now what happens is, say you are a large enterprise and you want to leverage the goodness of the cloud, but for whatever reasons you don't want to invest in all of that building, the secure building, the servers, the storage capacity. So what you want to do is you talk to one of these cloud vendors and get them to mark off some servers and some storage capacity behind potentially a firewall which you govern and you set the rules for. And that set of computers and that storage capacity is exclusively dedicated to your needs. And that's how a private cloud would manifest itself. The last question would be, hey, I'm an organization and I have this room where I have a bunch of servers and there's a boatload of hard drives connected to them giving me storage capacity. What about that? That, I would argue, is the in-house cloud, and it's your personal cloud. You've invested in it. It's capital expense that you've made to give yourself the power of some computing infrastructure and storage capacity, which equates to an in-house cloud. The last question that you would have is, so what about resources who work on these pieces of computing infrastructure to keep them up and running, and what goes on, say a certain program needs to be deployed, so how can I get that done? So that would come in two flavors essentially. One would be that in case you're on the public cloud or the private cloud hosted by someone else on your behalf, you could ask those people to find you resources who could help you out with your computing problems and help you create programs and allow you to actuate your needs or actualize your needs from this particular computing infrastructure and storage capacity, and see to it that you do full justice to your needs and go from there. That's kind of, you know, leveraging third-party resources to manage essentially what is your infrastructure, or you leverage the public infrastructure and enhance it for your particular needs with certain APIs and programs, etc. And you leverage more of the public cloud to actualize your particular needs. That's obviously the third-party resourcing scenario. The other resourcing scenario that you could potentially look at is you hire people, they come onto your payroll, and this is your own IT department, and these people are on your payroll, and you guide them and you tell them what kind of programs and what kind of computing requirements you have, and they either work on the private infrastructure that you have to create programs for you, or on the in-house infrastructure that you have to create programs for you. And these programs are specific to your business needs, they are your IP, they reside within your quote-unquote organizational firewall in terms of this is your intellectual property. Whereas if they do stuff on the public domain, then most likely it's open to any other person out there who wants to leverage that piece of functionality. Maybe if some business process is not so very mission critical for you, or it's information that could potentially not have serious ramifications in case it leaked out, or it somehow it potentially went out of your organization without your active control. So those you could put in the public domain. Like a lot of times you could easily leverage a public domain storage for your customer facing collateral, or essentially your public website you could potentially host on a public domain with enough know-how and content over there wherein people can freely access it, and you don't need to worry about it other than seeing to it that it's secure in terms of the content is under your control and it doesn't get hacked and content gets changed by some hacker. So those are some of the manifestations of what the cloud is, what kind of clouds exist, and the resources that you need to manage the cloud. In case you have questions out there, feel free to send them in response to this video, and I'll try to give you the best answer that I possibly can. You could research cloud computing as well. This was obviously a video on a layman's perspective to what cloud computing is and how we as folks in the software industry who are creating solutions for the cloud visualize it at the highest level. Obviously in the details there are a lot of devils and they need to be worked at to see to it that specific, very specific and detailed business needs that organizations and people have get served by the cloud. So that's a whole different ball game altogether. But at a high level, in case you want some information related to the cloud, this is what I have to offer. Thank you for your time.